Now, our next speaker has lived many lives and been wildly successful in each of them. Martine Rothblatt is from the class of '81, and she is currently the CEO and chairman of United Therapeutics, a groundbreaking bioengineering company that develops medications to treat life-threatening and chronic diseases. Now, she formed this company and dove into this field. She dove into pharma from completely different fields in order to try to solve an unusual disorder affecting her daughter, who I'm happy to say is thriving today. But that's really just one of the hats that Martine has worn over the course of her career. She founded an early GPS navigation firm, Geostar. She actually came to UCLA in part to study space law, and she also was the founder of Sirius Satellite Radio. She's also been a philosopher of the future. She's written several books about the future, and she's somebody who helps bring that future into being through her professional activities. She's an author, a former regulatory lawyer, a world traveler, a philosopher, a filmmaker, and I'm very proud that I can also call her a friend. I am not at all out of descriptive material, but I am out of breath. So please welcome Martine Rothblatt.
Thank you, Jennifer. I feel really lucky to have graduated from UCLA Law because this school and UCLA as my undergraduate really provided me such a great platform to undertake all the activities that Jennifer described. What I'd like to talk with everybody about today are two somewhat disconnected topics that I've been able to weave together: electric helicopters and manufactured organs. So I started, as Jennifer mentioned, SiriusXM shortly after some other satellite communications projects based on knowledge that I acquired here at UCLA and UCLA Law School. And I did that really out of a love for space technology and music. But a much greater love, the love of my partner Bina and I for our daughter Genesis, led me to start our current company, United Therapeutics, because, as she mentioned, Genesis was diagnosed with a fatal illness, pulmonary arterial hypertension, and there were no medicines approved for the condition. She was given just a very short few years to live. If I did not take the bull by its horns and come up with some solution, she would certainly have died. Fortunately, over the intervening 15 years, we have developed 4 different medicines for pulmonary hypertension that have been approved by the FDA and other drug agencies around the world. And Genesis is fortunately today a 30-year-old living happily and working at our company. But all of these medicines we've developed, they slow the progression of the disease. They don't cure it. And there still is no cure for pulmonary hypertension except for a lung transplant. Only about 10% of the patients with pulmonary hypertension get a lung transplant, and the rest die. And today, with these medicines, the mean survival is about 10 years from when they start taking the medicines, less if they're not at one of the better hospitals. So I realized that the next project I had to do was to come up with an unlimited supply of transplantable organs. Only in this way would everybody with pulmonary hypertension, as well as pulmonary fibrosis, cystic fibrosis, emphysema, COPD, other lung diseases, be able to have a chance at a normal lifespan. So we did begin manufacturing organs, and as this video shows, what we do today is we found out that 80% of the organs that were donated actually for lungs went in the trash can because they were not considered transplantable. So we developed a system where organs which have been donated but not accepted by transplant surgeons are sent by helicopter to a place where we resurface them and we bring them back into a transplantable shape. We do this by putting the organ under a glass dome, kind of like an artificial body, and have technicians work on it. We send real-time bronchoscopic and X-ray imagery to the transplant doctors throughout the country. And in 50% of the time, the transplant doctor goes ahead and accepts the organ for transplant, saving the life of somebody who would otherwise die in the transplant list. Amazingly, in just the past 3 years that we've been doing this, over 500 lives have been saved off of the transplant list. So this is really exciting to me, and 500 lives is a good beginning, but unfortunately there are hundreds of thousands of people that die of end-stage lung disease, and I realized even if I was able to recover all of the hearts and lungs that were thrown into bio-waste, it would not be enough to solve the problem. So coming up with a way to manufacture even more organs has become a big part of my job. And I cruise back and forth to my job in the Tesla automobile that I enjoy so much. My license plate is Tyvaso, which is the name of one of our medicines. Quite a few doctors around Washington, D.C. area stop me, and they kind of motion to roll down the window. And they say, I know who you are. I use your medicine on my patients. I charge our Tesla cars with thousands of kilowatts of photovoltaics on top of our roof. All of our companies' offices have photovoltaics on our roof. In fact, we have a policy that we won't build another building if we can't create as much energy as we use in one of our buildings. A few years ago, I received a rotary wing certification to become a helicopter pilot as I became more and more interested in the logistics of delivering organs to our transplant centers. As I learned more and more about helicoptering, though, I began to ask myself, geez, that's like thousands and ultimately millions of gallons of gasoline that are being burned and contributing to global warming. Why isn't there a way that the same kind of solar-powered electric power that powers my Tesla automobile, why can't that also power a helicopter and save all of that global warming? Some people said to me stuff like, well, why don't you not worry about the global warming because at least you're saving the lives of the people who need the organs? I said, that's true, but if like everybody's dead at the end for global warming, what difference does it make? So I began doing some back-of-the-envelope calculations, and I pretty quickly was able to convince myself that the very same batteries that powered my Tesla could in fact power helicopters to fly over 2 hours, which would be a reasonable distance from a manufacturing location to a hospital. And in fact, with solar-powered recharging pads, similar to superchargers that Tesla has throughout the country and that we might put at little-used general aviation airports, we could in fact have all transplant hospitals linked together to organ manufacturing sites. I ended up, I calculated I need 3,000 batteries just like the ones in my Tesla. Now, that's not really too many. That's not that many more pounds than the Tesla has. And it's in the range of the weight of helicopters. I cannot tell you how disappointing it was that every helicopter company expert that I presented this to, and I'm lucky enough to know the president of one helicopter company and top officials of another, they all said, no, this is completely impossible. All of our engineers have sworn that batteries are too heavy for the power they output to lift a helicopter. Now, I have to tell you that I'm not, it's not the kind of thing that's going to lead me to be deferential. When I started SiriusXM, every single person told me it was impossible to have enough power to get the audio signal that you needed from a car with a flat antenna embedded in the roof from a satellite a sixth of the way to the moon. Obviously, they were all wrong. When I started United Therapeutics, everybody told me that the medicines that I would need to affect just my daughter's lungs and not the vasculature and the rest of her body would be impossible. There's no way to make a medicine that dealt with the lungs and not the rest of the body. They too obviously were proven wrong. So I did think that this could be done because I wasn't violating any laws of physics. The next thing I did, though, is I went to people to try to prove me wrong. And I contracted with expert groups similar to like the RAND Corporation, but in the aeronautics field. And I said, here's my back-of-the-envelopes calculation. Prove me wrong. And in fact, they did not. They confirmed that I was correct, that batteries could in fact power a regular-sized helicopter carrying pilots and organs. But they had a number of caveats. And the bottom line of their caveat was that in order for me to achieve my goal, I needed to have a much better lift-drag ratio than a helicopter presents. Helicopters, in fact, have about the worst lift-to-drag ratio of anything that flies. You can see them. They're down on the bottom here with a lift-to-drag ratio of around 4.5. If any of you are familiar at all with flying, like a Cessna 172, which is a pretty ungainly-looking airplane with a high wing and everything, has a lift-to-drag ratio about 3 times better than a helicopter, and really cool things like the Rutan Voyager have lift-to-drag ratios of more than 5 times greater than a helicopter. So we had to figure out the solution to this problem is like batteries would work, but to go the range that we needed, which they said was totally possible, to go that range, I would need to have a lift-to-drag ratio of around 20 rather than a lift-to-drag ratio of around 4. It's interesting that car manufacturers have discovered the very same principle. And if you compare, you can go to Google and just look at drag coefficients of cars. And if you look at all the cars that do not rely solely on gasoline, they have about half the drag coefficient of cars that do rely on gasoline. So it's the same kind of principle because it's just drag instead of lift-to-drag. Smaller is better. With lift-to-drag, you want like a larger number. So what we came up with is what's called today a canard fixed-wing tilt rotor aircraft. And here you see it in the descent formation, where when it's flying, which is in cruise mode, which is actually like 90% of the time, it flies like an airplane and even gets additional lift from the front canard wings. And when it's in vertical takeoff and landing mode, which is actually only about 2% of the time, it then rotates to a helicopter type of configuration. This technology has already been well proven in the military's V-22 Osprey program, which being a military aircraft, it uses an absolutely insane amount of gas because it's got gigantic gas engines. It's also been proved actually for an electric drone in NASA's Grease Lightning program. So I'm an experimentalist, and the first thing I said is that, okay, well, we have to actually prove if this basic principle works. I'm very influenced by my first mentor, the physicist Gerard K. O'Neill, who said no paper project ever fails. And I had done a very nice paper project. My paper electric helicopter flew great. Even experts thought it would fly great. But I had to prove it. So what we started off doing is we bought a Robinson R-44 helicopter. These are made just down here in Southern California at the Robinson Helicopter Company. We bought a used one. We tore it up. We put there 1,000 pounds of batteries that you could see. After we stripped out the giant internal combustion engine from the helicopter, it too weighed 1,000 pounds. And I don't expect you to remember back to the range equation, but to have the basic empty weight of an aircraft at about half or equal to the full weight of the aircraft, in other words, the weight with the payload and with the power, whether it's gas or batteries, is a key to success in this area. So we have about a 0.5 ratio of the basic empty weight to the complete weight with everything here. We put all these pieces together right over at John Wayne Airport in the hangar right here. And on September 14th, just like about a week ago, can you start the video? Here's what happened. So that's completely flying by battery power. It's never been done anywhere in the history of the world, and we've checked Google for sure. So it is our Kitty Hawk moment. This proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that you can power a full-size helicopter with a pilot on board just with batteries. Those batteries, by the way, only take 3 hours to recharge, and that's just plugging them into the wall. Okay, it works. Next video. So that was September 14th, 2016. Write that in your little history books. Alrighty, so here's like a close-up of what we plan to build next based on we've proofed it. If you look down the lower right-hand corner, there's what we call our transplanted organ delivery cart. That's where we keep our organs healthy in from point of manufacture to delivery. Right now, we're using a number of different technologies. We've genetically modified the pig genome so that its hearts, lungs, and kidneys will not be rejected acutely once placed inside a human body. So we'll be able to manufacture hearts, lungs, and kidneys that way. We're also using a non-animal route where we print a scaffold of an organ with a collagen-type material and then cellularize that scaffold with a patient's own cells that have been differentiated from one of their own cells that was turned into an inducible pluripotent stem cell. Then they end up with an organ that matches their DNA, and they don't have to take any immunosuppressants at all. Our partners for this are now the Mayo Clinic. They've taught us a lot about our current program of using restored cadaveric donors that would have otherwise be thrown in the trash. They've had a number of successful transplants. We partner here in Southern California with synthetic genomics and the genome engineering. The Department of Defense is very interested in our concept of transplantation on demand. Soldier gets a battlefield injury. There's not going to be time for them to live if they have to wait on a transplant list. Overall, my plan is for an exponential growth in organ transplantation, from the thousands of lungs that are being able to be done today up to the hundreds of thousands of people that die of end-stage lung disease, tens of thousands of kidneys that are done today, up to the hundreds of thousands and even millions of people that die of end-stage lung and end-stage heart disease. That's going to take a revolution in organ transplant and transport, which is what our project is all about. Here is a video done with a Chinese company that I ran into after beginning to work on this project, and have already accomplished a autonomous but not human piloted drone that can serve much the same purpose. We have now partnered with this company and ordered 1,000 autonomous drones for organ transplant. Can you show the video?
3D bioprinters at United Therapeutics Dental Organ Manufacturing Center in Manchester, New Hampshire, print the inert pouchy scaffold of the lung from its larger proximal vessels and bronchi to its millions of distal arterioles. End-stage organ disease patients give up a few cells in a biopsy, which will be transformed into inducible pluripotent stem cells, all matching the patient's DNA to avoid any need for immunosuppressants. It was just in the past decade that science has learned how to turn differentiated human cells back into stem cells. Thereafter, the newly made stem cells can be redifferentiated back into a wide variety of different types of cells. In our manufacturing laboratories, we will redifferentiate the made stem cells from a patient into endothelial, epithelial, muscle, and connective tissue cells that match the patient's DNA. After expanding the numbers of these differentiated cells into the tens of billions needed to cellularize each organ, we stream them into the previously bioprinted scaffold. The entire process of cell expansion and cellularization via streaming takes about 2 to 3 months per organ. At the end of the process, there is a newly manufactured, personalized organ that matches the DNA of the intended patient. Once removed from its bioreactor, the organ needs to be transplanted within hours. A Transplantable cart will be loaded onto an EA-manufactured organ transport helicopter or MAW for delivery to the surgeon's operating room.
So that kind of wraps up everything that I was saying today. It really is all inspired in the first instance, by this car that I really enjoy driving very, very much, and seeing that if Elon Musk and Tesla Motors could do what everybody thought was impossible, which was to make an electric car that was best in class and you can power just with the sun, then that really inspired me a lot to think that I can make the electric helicopter and have it powered by the sun and use it to deliver organs throughout the country to save people's lives. Thank you.